Alexander Shkudun. Letter to the future. If a butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil, will a tornado begin in Texas? Philip Marilis.
It was a full moon tonight. As I stepped out of my apartment for my usual evening walk, I stopped for a moment, unable to take my eyes off the beauty woven across the sky. The moon was mesmerizing. There was something mystical, magnetic, even ominous about it. It resembled a bright little spotlight spreading soft, white light across the sky, so much so that the night itself seemed to wrinkle, unable to fully close its colossal eyelids. The next second, my gaze shifted downward and froze on a human figure standing with their back to me. It was clearly a man, broad-shouldered, of average height, about my build. He wore a dark cloak of an unusual cut. The fabric flared slightly at the sides like a barrel, and a decorative hood at the back reminded me of a character from the video game Assassin's Creed. The stranger stood still, seemingly focused on something happening on the opposite side of the courtyard, though, truth be told, there was absolutely nothing of interest going on there. The courtyard was empty, clean, and covered in snow. A few parked cars lined the entrances, and in the distance came the sound of barking dogs and a child crying. The whole situation felt like something out of a video game or a movie. Who was this? A killer? A maniac? Damn, why are those always the first thoughts that come to mind? Must be the fault of television. That's where you hear the daily reports about murders, robberies, assaults, and so on. It's from there that the negativity pours in, making people flinch at any passing shadow, especially during a full moon when the white sphere, frozen in the sky, and the mystical atmosphere around it seem to suggest that something might happen, and it's always something bad. Meanwhile, the man in the cloak kept standing there, unmoving, as if lost in his own thoughts. Maybe he was even plotting something sinister to take over this miserable world. "Are you okay?" I asked the stranger, deciding to urgently separate reality from the phantasmagoric nonsense flooding my brain. The figure turned, and I froze. He was looking straight at me. It was me, slightly older, a little grayer, slightly disheveled, but unmistakably me and no one else. "Hey, namesake from the past," said a voice I knew all too well. The second me smiled. Honestly, I've never liked my own smile, and seeing it from the outside now only confirmed it. Coupled with all the other circumstances, it looked more like a beastly grin. Yeah, my smile sucks. So, time travel is real now, huh? I was surprised at how calm and cold my tone was. I mean, how many times have I imagined this moment, reading sci-fi books, daydreaming about it? I had run the scene through my mind so many times. How I would pepper myself from the future with questions, dig out all the secrets, hug myself tightly. It was supposed to be a destiny-shifting encounter. And what did I end up saying? A dry sentence, stating the obvious, though not exactly obvious, yet it just slipped out. No joy, no emotions. Apparently, the second me hadn't expected our meeting to go this way either. He looked a bit embarrassed, lowering his eyes, and awkwardly shifting from foot to foot like a schoolboy caught red-handed. "As you can see, it's real," he chuckled after a second. Then he looked into my eyes. "Are you happy to see me? You were the one who kept sending letters to the future, telling me what mountains you wanted to climb." I swallowed the lump in my throat and mentally slapped myself 100 times. Of course I'm happy. I extended my hand and a moment later pulled myself into a tight hug. Must have looked really weird from the outside. I used to write to myself in the future every month. On the 27th, I once read that this number is magical. I would sit down at my computer, open a website for sending letters to the future, and write. A bit of everything. I shared happy moments, set goals and tasks, and felt genuinely joyful when things turned out exactly as I had hoped. The service allowed you to send an email that would come back to you after a specified amount of time, a year, 2, or even 50. Whatever you wanted. Though, in reality, the letter didn't actually go anywhere. It just stayed on the server, waiting for its moment to shine, until the Earth made a few more orbits around the Sun, and what we call time moved a little forward. That clever psychological trick kept me sharp. It let me set goals, and knowing that my future self would surely ask about them helped me achieve them. It was motivating. For example, last year I wrote that within a year I'd own a car. Just the other day I received that letter and read my past thoughts with great pleasure. Of course, I still didn't have a car, but I hadn't lost hope. I just pushed that goal 1 year further. The 27th is coming soon. But I never thought those letters actually went to the future, or that I'd be reading them there. It was unbelievable. It just didn't fit in my head. Even more so considering that I was, at that very moment, having a conversation with myself, and that time travel existed. All right, what will people think seeing 2 guys hugging? Future me stepped back and smiled again. Nowadays it's perfectly normal, remember? We're moving toward Europe after all. Touché. Meanwhile, my thoughts began racing. The numbness and shock were fading, and my brain started analyzing the situation not as a figment of my imagination, although I still wasn't fully convinced, but as a reality I had to accept. Of course, I couldn't rule out the possibility that this was just a dream, a vivid and fantastic one, the kind you get before waking up, when you remember every detail and truly believe what's happening. Even the classic pinch yourself test doesn't work. You feel the pain, but still lie asleep in your cozy bed. Well, if this is a dream, so be it. But what if it's real? It seemed my guess from the future picked up on my doubts. I'd think I was dreaming too, he nodded. It's logical, rational. Don't forget, we think the same. No matter what I say, you won't completely believe me anyway, so feel free to assume this is a dream. That works for me. I nodded, suddenly beginning to grasp the gravity of the situation. Because I wouldn't come back to bother myself from the past if everything in the future was fine. That much was clear. It meant my future self wanted to change something. Warn me, maybe. At least, that's what my gut was telling me. Scenes from films kept flashing in my mind. The 13th Floor, Back to the Future, Interstate 60, and similar moments from books I had recently read. But I understood that all of it, movies and books, was entertainment. The imagination of writers brought to life to satisfy an audience, while what was happening here and now was real. And accepting that reality was incredibly hard. A reality no one else on Earth had ever faced. Or had they? Because if one person could come from the future, maybe another could too. But if that were true, those lucky enough to meet themselves would surely run to the newspapers, magazines, and TV stations with their sensational story, and the media would never be able to contain that wave. And since that's not happening, maybe I am just dreaming after all. The second me stood silently, giving me time to calmly process everything that was happening. Why did you come? I realized that waiting wouldn't get me anywhere, and it was better to find out the purpose of this guest from the future's visit now than figure out what to do with that information. And if this was just a dream, it'd be a shame to wake up before finishing the conversation. Because you don't believe in what you write in your letters to me, in every new business goal you set for yourself. There's no spark, no excitement, no fire. Your thoughts are all passive. This way, you'll never reach what you dream of. It'll all collapse like a house of cards. You'll live poorly, scraping by on random gigs. You'll be buried in debts and loans. You won't have a loving woman or a family because no one wants to marry a loser, and there will be no one to reach out and help you. Saying I was speechless doesn't even begin to cover it. I was stunned, completely unable to utter a word. What did I expect? I thought he'd give me winning lottery numbers, tell me where and when I'd meet my future wife, maybe warn me about some danger at the very least. But this? I never imagined I'd get scolded like a child for writing silly letters to the future, and by whom? Myself. Of course, there was a lot of truth in what the second me said, but seriously, what the hell? If you don't believe in what you're doing, nothing will work out. If you're not doing something every day that gets you even a millimeter closer to your dream, then nothing will happen. Anger started to bubble inside me. Like a kettle, I was beginning to boil. Utterly confused, I just spread my arms out. So you came from the future to lecture me? You crossed space and time just to tell me I should believe in myself and my ideas. Are you serious? Or did you turn into some loser in the future and now all you do is quote motivational quotes from social media like some failed business coach. The second me burst out laughing, and laughed hard, joyfully, even snorting now and then. I don't see what's so funny. Snorting again, the guest exhaled through his smile. Oh, come on, don't be such a kid. You're already sulking, aren't you? Sulking won't bring you success either. And yeah, you're right. I haven't achieved that much. No streets or landmarks are named after me. I'm not revered by the townspeople. No statues in my honor. But I did become a multi-billionaire. You? Me? A billionaire? Get out! My desire to argue vanished in an instant. All resentment dissolved. The second me smirked, slowly pulled a credit card from his pocket and casually said, "Via, when did Forbes first write about me?" A pleasant female voice suddenly responded from the seemingly ordinary credit card, making me flinch.
August 27th, 2027.
See? He smiled. Exactly 10 years from today, I become a multi-billionaire, and I'll be able to afford all the toys that real men enjoy. Guess how I traveled back in time? That's right, money. Time travel is expensive, very expensive, unaffordable for regular people, only for people like me. Oh, and speaking of which, my wife, Via, show hologram number 247. To my amazement, a hologram of an incredibly beautiful woman materialized in the air. She had long chestnut hair, stunning brown eyes, delicate facial features that captured attention like pollen to bees, and a warm, welcoming smile on her full lips. Her figure would make any top model envious. She was my ideal woman, the one I'd been searching for all this time, but never found. I stared at everything in disbelief, with only one thought swirling in my head. So you just here to show off? Your wife, your gadgets to yourself? What? A second me raised his hands in protest. You know I'm a humble guy. I came to tell you that sometimes we all need a good kick to start moving. So think of me as your kick. Not even a kick. A boulder crashing down on your head. Remember me, or rather, yourself, from the future, and know that you achieved all this. Nothing is impossible, believe me. A person can accomplish even the most incredible things, like becoming a multi-billionaire in 10 years.
Time portal opening in 5 minutes.
Came the voice of the computer. Unfortunately, I have to go now, the guest patted me on the shoulder. If I don't get back in time, I'll be stuck here broke with you. He chuckled, winked at me one last time, and headed quickly toward the other side of the courtyard where he had been looking the whole time. And the wind carried his final words to me. Don't just make plans, realize them. Stop dreaming and start doing. The next day, I quit my job. I simply wrote a resignation letter and handed it to my boss. While reading it, he kept glancing up at me suspiciously, sensing that something was off. When he finished, he leaned back in his oversized leather chair and sighed.
Don't rush it.
He began cautiously.
If it's about the salary, we can double it. You're a great specialist.
I just smiled in return. I wanted so badly to ask that fat, pot-bellied guy who spent his days sitting in a cramped office with a single window, doing almost nothing. Why didn't you raise my salary earlier, if I'm such a great specialist? Why do people only get noticed and appreciated when they're about to leave? I remembered a quote by Oscar Wilde. If you don't have your own dream, you'll end up working for someone who does. That's a powerful truth, but dreaming isn't enough. You have to act. And there isn't much time for action, just 70 to 90 years on average. I turned down the generous offer and left. My soul had never felt so calm. I suddenly felt wings growing behind my back. I realized that all doors were now open to me. All roads lay ahead. I only had to take the first step onto the path of great opportunities and great wealth. I knew I would become a billionaire in 10 years, and that gave me an unbelievable energy and motivation. There was so much to do and achieve. I launched my business. At first it was incredibly difficult to keep it afloat. The first year was hell. I was drowning in debt. I racked my brain trying to figure out how to pay the rent or buy stock. I ate in shady diners and lost 10 kilos. But I didn't give up. What kept me going was the thought of the future. I knew I'd succeed, no matter how tough it got. This was temporary. This would pass. And day by day, it really did get easier, more confident. A smile appeared more often on my face. I started attending more exhibitions, going to the theater, because I knew eventually I'd meet her somewhere, the girl with the brown eyes, who would give my life true meaning. I abandoned the idea of writing letters to my future self. Now, on the 27th of each month, instead of setting new goals or boasting or dreaming, I analyzed my actual business. I studied the numbers, looked for weak spots, and did everything to improve them. I kept moving forward, no matter what, doing more, better, and smarter. And of course, I often thought about the guest from the future. What a confident, well-groomed man I had become. Yes, older and slightly worn out, probably from all the work, but the result was worth it. A billionaire in 10 years, can you imagine? To delay aging, I joined a gym and tried to stay in great shape. A healthy body means a healthy mind. I also started learning English, figuring that for my business, expanding communication with international partners would be both useful and profitable. But most importantly, I finally understood why I hadn't given myself the winning lottery numbers. It wouldn't have helped. I wouldn't have learned how to manage money or invest wisely. If I had hit the jackpot, I probably would have spent it all within a few years and ended up broke again. That was an incredibly insightful lesson from the future, taught to me by none other than myself. So subtle, so elegant. What more could I ask for? And I found this talented young programmer from Ukraine who, purely on enthusiasm, agreed to work on creating a new supercomputer in the shape of a credit card, one that could talk to users, a personal assistant, so to speak. The idea seemed brilliant. Yes, I borrowed it from my future self. Some might call it theft. But wait, how can you steal something that hasn't even been invented yet? And who says it wasn't my own creation all along? I was transforming myself, and my entire world was changing with me.
4 minutes until the portal opens.
Came the soft voice of the computer. Thank you, Via. We're almost there. I quickened my pace. Well, the meeting with my past self went even better than I expected. I managed to ignite the fire of entrepreneurship in him, to push him toward action. I became a sort of catalyst, dispelling all his doubts and fears. After all, sometimes what we lack the most is a guarantee, a kind of insurance against failure, so that one fine day someone would come to us and say, if you start a business tomorrow, it will succeed. It won't collapse within a year, and you'll become a successful entrepreneur, solving all your financial problems for good. If only we had that certainty. Of course, I could have acted differently. I could have advised him to invest in Bitcoin, which would grow 18,000 times over the next year, then crash just as quickly, but still make a fortune. I could have given him the winning lottery numbers that would be drawn in a couple of days. Or even told him which stocks to invest his savings in, the ones I still had back then. But I didn't do any of that, because I wanted my past self to earn his wealth on his own, to consciously choose this hard road of an entrepreneur and succeed. One-time wins don't make you rich. They don't teach you how to manage money. And victories without crushing failures don't teach you anything either. Now, I could speak of it with confidence, from the perspective of another time, with experience behind me, painful experience, because the bright, cloudless future I had so beautifully imagined for myself back then never came true. Unfortunately, I didn't become a billionaire. I never found the courage to quit my job, lured by the comfort of stability and the tempting offer of a doubled salary. But that joy didn't last long. 4 years later, the company I worked for went bankrupt. And all of us, promising employees, skilled professionals working for someone else's dream, I didn't even know the owners' names, found ourselves on the street with no severance pay. The company didn't even have enough money for that. Someone's dream had burst and shattered our own dreams of a better life in time. Due to the emerging crisis, I couldn't find another job. I had to survive on unemployment benefits. Of course, I didn't tell any of this to my past self. I was, of course, not married. The holographic projection of the woman I showed my past self had been created from a photo I once cut out of a fashion magazine while still working in the office. Back then, I carried it in my wallet. Well, technically, the hologram was generated via my government-issued life assistant from the future. This device was given to everyone living on welfare. It tracked my pulse, blood pressure, and other vitals. It helped me search for jobs and enrolled me in online courses to improve my skills. The government tried to help in its own way, and I would have likely continued dragging my miserable existence if not for a chance event. One independent institute researching time travel announced it was recruiting volunteers for a series of experiments. Since I suspected it might actually involve time travel, I didn't hesitate for a second. I saw it as a stunning opportunity to fix my financial situation and contribute to society. I just took the risk. My first real risk in life, completely reckless and unbelievable, but I truly had nothing to lose. A life-raised experiment. That's how Forbes titled it. And it worked, at least I thought so. I believed in it. I made an investment into the past. Not without the help of letters to the future, of course, which played an important role in this whole performance. Of course, I never actually saw those letters. They just stayed safely stored in the email system of that past, arriving at the inbox on the exact date and year I had set. I simply knew myself too well. And I knew I would definitely fall for that letter trick.
1 minute until the portal opens.
The female voice now sounded more insistent. Don't worry, we've arrived. I stopped in front of the fence. A regular gray, nondescript fence, like thousands all over the country. The kind kids love to scribble 3-letter words on. If I hadn't known, I would never guess that one of the fence's panels was actually a portal to another world. The world of the future. At the set moment, the solid concrete would transform into a trembling liquid, and you could pass through to a place no human had ever stepped foot in before. As far as I knew, I was the first volunteer, at least in my country. I looked thoughtfully at the sky. A full moon was shining with a mystical white flame, turning the heavens into a breathtaking canvas. It was impossible to look away.
Portal open.
The fence trembled and rippled. Yes, it's really time. I took one last look at the familiar courtyard, where not long ago I had spoken to my past self, and quietly whispered, "Good luck to you. I wonder what will change in my life when I step out of the portal into my own time." Kiev 27 of February 2018.